we should not allow it to go.
All right.
But I would suggest that government should take it off from where President Buhari left it. Work with Russia.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Let's move on quickly. It was the legendary Afrobeat creator Fela Anikulapo Kuti who sang about government magic. Such magics abound with us as we speak, like the moribund refineries that have gulped millions in maintenance costs, but still lying idle. The Senate has expressed worries regarding the $1.5 billion approved in 2021 for the turnaround maintenance of the Port Harcourt refinery, noting a lack of significant results. The chairman of the Senate ad hoc committee investigating alleged economic sabotage in the petroleum industry, Senator Opeyemi Bamidele, stressed that it is unjust and inappropriate to overlook public companies while private enterprises continue to prosper. He said that the National Assembly is ready to carry out the investigative hearing with all sense of honor and responsibility. Meanwhile, Nigerians have berated the federal government over the endless announcements of commencement of operations at the Port Harcourt refinery. Let's share the story by TVC News. TVC News with you.
This is the first meeting that kicks off investigations in the alleged economic sabotage in Nigeria's petroleum industry. This ad hoc committee, led by the leader of the Senate, Senator Opeyemi Bamidele, is determined to get to the root of the situation and unmask those behind the inefficiency in Nigeria's petroleum sector. Although the committee insists its inquisition is not to witch hunt or trade blames, but it is worried that the country's assets are left in ruins.
In 2021, specifically, the Federal Executive Council approved $1.5 billion for the turnaround maintenance of the Port Harcourt refinery. Yet, this investment has not yielded significant returns.
Key actors in Nigeria's petroleum industry invited also expressed frustration with the situation, denying all allegations of direct involvement in the alleged sabotage. However, they appealed to the committee to ensure that its proposed public hearings are open and widely televised to ensure transparency and avert any misconceptions.
We can't speak. There are things we know we don't say, and that's why I agree with the Honourable Minister that even the things we won't say, we'll say them when the right time comes. That this country is bigger and greater than all of us.
This is one sector that has a lot of misinformation. And so I'm very happy that today we have an opportunity to be able to straighten, some of those, misinformations.
Some of us serve this country, we sleep for less than 3 hours on a daily basis. That we are very patriotic Nigerians and we try to work within the ambit of the law.
If man as a body, sir, would like to use this medium to solicit the support of the Senate to ensure that there is a level playing ground in this sector of the economy.
The committee also announced plans to jointly conduct the investigation with the House of Representatives. The committee says it is committed to conducting a thorough and impartial investigation across all areas outlined in the Senate's resolution that will hopefully address issues that are potential threats to the economic and fiscal stability of the country. TVC TVC News, Abuja.
Right, gentlemen, before we go to our guests in Abuja, it's good to see that attention has now turned to this very crucial sector. 4 refineries in the country, government-owned, but none of them is working. And you also hear Madekari say this call for accountability is an attack on his person and the institution. Why are you laughing?
We just discussed the Ajakuta, debacle, and this is another case that is the story of Nigeria, the tragedy, of the Nigerian, dream. Because those who planned this country, they did well. But what happened thereafter? We have 4 refineries, 4, all of them moribund. Not for 1 year, not for 2 years, not for 10 years, not for... And Nigeria a mighty country is unable to do anything, no aids, abroad, nobody has answered any question. And we keep spending money. The installed capacity of all 450,000 is it barrels of, per day?
Barrels per day.
Less than what one patriotic Nigerian. What we have spent. I remember in May last year, the outgoing House of Reps did an investigation just like this they are doing now. And they came up with the fact that in 10 years, Nigeria spent 11.5 trillion naira fixing 3 of the refineries. And they promised, because it was 2 weeks to the inauguration of this current house, they promised that they will hand over the report of their investigation to the incoming, legislature. Okay. That is this current one.
10%.
That time in dollar, that money in dollars as their report was $25 billion. That is to say, more than $19 million Dangote used to build a brand new refinery that can produce 650,000. So we now ask, what has come over us? Now, you now ask questions, the man in charge of the corporation, of this, that owns this refinery. And when you raise question of accountability, it's an affront, attack on his person. Maybe I know go school and don't understand.
I tell you. Let me come to you before we go to Abuja.
I need to be educated.
Many carriers also said the company has grown. It says from a lost company for 43 years to a profit-making company today.
Well, it's very easy to say that a company is making profit, but the workers who are Nigerians, in this case, we can't see it. So because I'm happy that the Senate is trying to look into this, that how much, how did they spend the $1.5 billion? Because I remember the Minister of State at that time, Timere Silva, said that these funds, which was approved by FEC, I think 2021, that they will spend it in 3 phases. The first phase will be 18 months, second phase 24 months, and then the third phase 44 months. So if you count from 2021 now to this time, by now we should be having
all of them should have been
rectified. He said to be funded by NNPC then through internally generated revenue, and there's Afrexim Bank, but nothing has happened. That is not the only story. 2016, there was a presidential approval for $2.1 billion that will go into the refinery. We are so happy that they want to probe this. But before we talk about probing, you said something that there was a probe earlier. What happened?
In May last year, House of Reps.
In July 2022, the House of Reps, led by, I think, Honorable Ibrahim Aliyu, ad hoc committee, they investigated oil scam, subsidy. 23 companies, they could not trace them. There
was also a $4 billion investigation into the $4 billion lost to oil theft.
Oil theft.
200,000 barrels.
So what are you talking? 2022, up to today, we don't know 23 companies where they are registered sales and all that. So you are coming with another probe. How much would those senators be giving to sit down and probe this 1.5 billion? How much would they give them as allowances?
If it's
going to be too much, they should just allow it and don't bother. But if there will be no result for this probing, they should not waste our time.
Because we have had probes.
Yes, and you get money to get allowances to go.
We'll continue this conversation after speaking with our guests. Good afternoon, Mr. Kevin. Is joining us from Abuja studio, has to get more insight on this issue. Is an economist and CEO of Dairy Hills Limited, Kelvin Emmanuel. Good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us this Sunday.
Jumoke, thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon to you and the guests in the studio.
I'm sure you've been listening to our conversation in the studio. This moribund refineries have continued to go up millions in maintenance costs. Who are responsible for these allocations and why are there no checks?
Well, you know, I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm not exactly optimistic about the probe that the Senate has launched. This is not the first time National Assembly has launched a probe. The question is, when you get to the end of the probe, are people going to be indicted? And is a recommendation for prosecution going to be made to the prosecutorial agencies in Nigeria, the EFCC, the ICPC et al.? So far in Nigeria, I have not seen that. You could see that, you know, over the last 20 years, about 11.5 to 12 trillion has been expended, and it's equivalent to between 20 and 25 billion dollars, depending on the exchange rate we're using to calculate it, when the monies were allocated for this turnaround maintenance. And let me briefly tell you about the potential the Port Harcourt Refinery has, and then the reality, and why I will not believe anything NNPC says until marketers start driving out trucks with products from that LMA gate in Port Harcourt. Now, the old side of the refinery, 60,000 barrels, was commissioned by Shell and British Petroleum in 1965, 5 years after Nigeria got independence. The second leg of it, the new one, was finished in 1989. It can do 150,000 barrels of processing capacity. I think that's the one that they're currently talking about that can do up to 12 million liters of PMS at full capacity utilization. The interesting thing about that Port Harcourt refinery is that it's in Eleme. So it has proximity to, for example, Ajib is a technical advisor to NNPC Chemical Refinery Limited, the subsidiary in charge of the refinery. And Ajib has OML 63. And I think recently, Wando got ministerial consent to acquire the onshore fields for Nigerian Ajib Oil Company, or Ajib, Eni. Yeah. Now, that Port Harcourt refinery has a gas powered plant that can do up to 84 megawatts and power the entire refinery. It has a crude distillation unit. It has a vacuum distillation unit. It has a catalytic reformer that is used for secondary refining of naphtha. It has a naphtha hydrotreating unit. Then it also has a fluid catalytic unit. And the reason why this is important, I know for people who don't understand these technical jargons, they'll say, what am I talking about? The reason why it's important is because unlike the vacuum distillation unit, the fluid catalytic unit does not need a physical process for separating larger compounds or naphtha, which is the base for refining PMS. It can use a chemical process, which is easier and more efficient to refine or distill larger molecules into smaller molecules to form your premium motor spirit or gasoline. You know, so if they can actually go ahead, which I don't believe, because for me, when it comes to NNPC, seeing is believing. I don't believe any promise they make until I see the results in person. You know, you have that refinery with its proximity to gas, get gas, you know, to feed and power the refinery. You know, it will produce PMS, it will produce diesel, produce petrochemical feedstock for polypropylene and polyethylene crystals. It will produce bitumen binders. It will produce base oil, which is used for doing lubricants. So I think Nigeria spends about $750 million every year importing base oil to process lubricants every year. So you can imagine the potential it has. But the reality is that when you look at the process of bidding, of awarding the contracts for the turnaround maintenance for the refineries, has it been transparent? In my opinion, it's not been transparent. The process for awarding contracts for engineering, procurement, and construction, the rehabilitation of this refinery has not been transparent. There is too much government interference, just like there's interference with every other thing NNPC does. And this is the reason why I've always said, Jumoke, for we to see a change with how a state-owned enterprise, NNPC, is run, not just for the NNPC Chemical Refinery Limited, also for NNPC Exploration and Production, E&P, which in my opinion is the most profitable and important arm of the NNPC group. Yeah? For every other arm of NNPC, there needs to be a process of transferring NNPC's shares to a beneficial owner and asset manager, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated, as specified in the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021, so that you can create a Chinese wall that will ensure that there is no interference, and the asset manager will start a process of sending the corporation into the markets to raise money, and in turn allow the new shareholders to appoint who they want as a management team and as a non-executive board of directors. That is the only way you can have it, do an evaluation, a thorough evaluation of all the internal processes and systems, corporate governance procedures that are currently very weak, in my opinion, and ensure that you can shed off dead assets and double down on valuable assets for upstream, for midstream, and in my opinion, shed off the downstream assets, because I don't see any reason why NNPC is playing downstream. And as the PIA said, NNPC is supposed to control only 30% of this downstream oil and gas sector, but it's controlling more than that. So, this is the unfortunate reality we have, that Nigeria is a major oil producing country, is a member of OPEC, but yet NNPC, under the domestic crude oil supply obligations, cannot supply Dangote Refinery with the petroleum feedstock.
All right, let me come in here.
Achieve full capacity utilization.
All right, so talking about transparency, now that the chairman of the Senate ad hoc committee is investigating alleged economic sabotage in that industry, Senator Bamidele said they will do a thorough job this time, which you have also asked for. So how confident are you about this? And what exactly should the Senate be investigating?
So, like I said earlier, I'm not confident in the Nigerian Senate. I will only believe it when I see it. But if I'm going to give them pointers, I think, number one, the representative of the Comptroller General of Customs made a very important point about the fact that Nigerian Customs Service is not included in the fiscalization for NMDPRA and NUPRC. Fiscalization is simply an electronic process that talks about the validation and monitoring of financial transactions for tax compliance and government oversight. So today, Nigerian customs can measure the quantity of PMS that comes into Nigeria as is imported, but it cannot ascertain the quality of that product. Now, I know that's the function of SON, but you need an integration. So you need an integration of the activities of SON, the activities of Nigerian Customs Service, the activities of NMDPRA. And you have to include the customs in the fiscalization process. Nigerian Customs Service has also said that it doesn't have the logistics and the security to patrol 24 nautical miles for anti-smuggling, as specified in the Extant Act that establishes it, which is one of the mandates of Nigerian Customs Service. So you have a situation, for example, where, based on the empirical evidence we have today, the quality of PMS and diesel that is imported into Nigeria cannot be used in the countries where it's imported from. But yet Nigeria is a dumping ground for all kinds of very dirty fuels into Nigeria. And we can see very clearly that the Dangote Refinery has better quality product based on the test that has been conducted. So Nigerian Senate needs to look into quality. It needs to ask the regulators to include Nigerian Customs Service in the fiscalization process. It needs to mandate SON and NMDPRA to set up a standard lab to test for research octane number, motor octane number, sulfur level, distillation level, to test for the quality process that constitutes the OPEC the ECOWAS framework, and ensure that your sulfur level, your flash points, and your research octane number, your octane level, is in line with the ECOWAS framework as specified by the law. The Nigerian Senate needs to look into the fact that Section 65 of the PI is not obeyed, that says that we need to migrate from unregistered joint ventures and production sharing contract that relies on signature bonus and production threshold bonus to an incorporated joint venture company model that will ensure higher governance and transparency in how the sharing of crude oil for royalty oil, tax oil, and cost oil is being calculated between joint venture partners and operators upstream. That is the foundation of ensuring that we can increase our daily output from the current 1.45 million barrels per day plus condensates at 1.6 million up to 2 million and above 2 million, like the president has specified in his mandate for oil and gas sector.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask you, if you are in a position to advise President Tinubu, what will you suggest he should do with NNPC as it is now to make it to be more efficient?
The first thing I will advise Mr. President to do today is to commission a forensic audit of NNPC to determine the true state of its balance sheet, number one. Number two, I'll advise Mr. President to amend the act that establishes Ministry of Finance Incorporated and send NNPC, the shares that the FGN holds in NNPC, to an asset manager. The asset manager knows how to do business process engineering. The third thing I will advise Mr. President to do is for him to look at Section 65 of the Petroleum Industry Act to move the sharing, because for onshore and offshore, when you look at the cumulative average, NNPC owns 55% and the operators own 45%. Okay? To move that process from unregistered joint ventures and PSCs to incorporated joint venture models. Okay? The fourth thing I'll advise Mr. President to do is to ensure that since the likes of IOCs like Chevron and Mobil is not in the NLNG framework, and you have the likes of Eni, you have the likes of Total and Shell in NLNG framework, to have AUPRC and FIRS design fiscal framework for gas pricing models, for sharing models, for carried cost, for carried interest, for developing non-associated gas deep offshore. And this is important because I'll tell you what, today, Nigeria has a total gas output of 4.5 billion standard cubic feet. Nigeria needs about 9 billion standard cubic feet for domestic gas delivery obligations and for the export markets. NLNGs are 65% capacity utilization. That's the reason why when they paid their dividends and their taxes, it wasn't as high as the 2022-2023 financial year. So if you increase the capacity utilization of NLNG, and negotiate fiscal framework for deep offshore non-associated gas development, you're going to see new investors come in to develop non-associated gas fields. You're going to see the gas output increase. You're going to see more FLNG projects, and you're going to see more FX revenues from exporting of gas, and you're going to see high pressure on the high pressure pipes that takes gas from gas gathering manifolds off onto the gas-based industries. The final point I will advise Mr. President on is on the issue of crude oil theft. It's laudable that the FEC has actually approved the purchase of 187 meters that can be installed on those pipes, 666 kilometers of pipes in Nigeria, to detect sudden drops in temperature and pressure and communicate through heat signals to the OCC terminals. But it's important that Mr. President ask his Office of National Security Advisor, NSA, to audit the ranks of the security agencies, Marine Police, Nigerian Navy, Nigerian Air Force, the external security contractors, to ensure there are no saboteurs. That is very key, because it's one thing for you to get intelligence by having heat signals communicate drop in temperature and pressure on those pipes to prevent hot pressure tapping. It's on that thing for the security agencies to act on it. And crude oil theft is a major problem we have today. And like a wise man said, he said anything that lasts for more than 24 hours, then you have to suspect why the government is not doing anything about it. So Mr. President needs to ensure that beyond having those sensors communicate activities of crude oil theft and sabotage, he also have his NSA audit the rank of the security agencies manning and policing those crude oil pipelines, moving crude oil from flow station to terminals. If the president pays attention to these 5 points I've mentioned, you're going to see the output for oil and gas increase, and you're going to see the amount of FX that Nigeria gets to enable CBN settle its balance of payments also improve dramatically.
All right, for a fact, Nigerians do not trust the NNPCL, but Medicare says the company has grown. And we've also heard Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Hanneke Lokpobiri, say that the oil sector was bedeviled by misinformation. And now he's asking for a live telecast of the proceedings. He's asking the Senate to approve this. How do you think this will go a long way in addressing this misinformation the minister is talking about?
Well, misinformation is one thing, but is it really important? And the president has executive powers to make changes in NNPC. The Senate inquiry is not important if there are no indictments, and if the Senate does not forward the recommendation for prosecution to the agencies that are in charge of that. That's why I don't have any faith in the work of the Nigerian Senate. I always believe it when I see it. Mr. President doesn't need to wait for the Nigerian Senate to act. He has all the information. He has the technical people around him. He needs to listen to good advice and take action. He has less than 3 years to go for his first term. Until the next election, he needs to take action. Because oil and gas is the mainstay of Nigeria's economy. It's 90% the source of foreign exchange for Nigeria. Yeah? And the fact that Nigeria's naira has dropped 92% within the last 10 years, also the fact that in 2015, Nigeria migrated in its fiscal strategy paper from revenue to debt. And he stopped getting $3 billion monthly to settle balance of payments from oil and gas, and he moved to DSDP. So if the president doesn't take action and is waiting for the Senate for another 3 or 6 months to give him a report before he takes action, then he doesn't understand the priority and how urgent it is for him to start taking action today on the recommendations I've made or other of his advisors has given him on the oil and gas industry. He doesn't need to wait for the Senate.
All right.
Okay. There's one aspect of the NNPC boss statement that I didn't understand. As far as you are, do you think the NNPC is profitable, as you said?
Well, you know, I just saw that the NNPC has put out a statement that the government is owing 4.7 trillion naira for subsidy payments. And the first question I want to ask NNPC is, between 2009 and 2014, Nigeria's consumption of PMS moved from about 24 million liters per day to about 28, 29 million liters per day. Now, NNPC is saying to Nigerians, it moved from OPA oil processing agreements where it was giving crude oil to 13 companies that had refineries offshore and were giving PMS, diesel, and Jet A1 in value mismatch trading contracts, swap agreements, to DSDP, where it mortgaged Nigeria's crude oil and crude oil swaps in exchange for PMS and still in a value trading mismatch, crude oil swaps. The question I have for NNPC is, do they have empirical evidence to show that the number of cars, motorcycles, tricycles, generators within the last 10 years has doubled to justify the fact that PMS consumption went from 29 million liters in 2014 to 70 million liters in 2024? I doubt they can provide you with that evidence. And that's the reason why I think Mr. President needs to have the NMDPRA and all the relevant agencies audit Nigeria's daily consumption and to be sure that people are not cornering products for themselves.
All right, then. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I've been speaking with an economist and CEO of Dairy Hills Limited, Kelvin Emmanuel. Thank you so much for your perspectives on this particular conversation. Thank you so much. Please have a great afternoon.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, you heard Kelvin Emmanuel there. What's your major takeaway from that conversation?
I think he has a very good understanding of the oil and gas sector. Yes, very good grasp. And I think this the kind of people we need. I'm meeting for the first time, but I think has a very good understanding.
It's been on the program.
Yeah, and I think the 5 suggestions he made to the president, they are very, very important suggestions, especially tracking oil theft through the Office of the National Security Advisor. I think we have billions of people who are using Uber all over the world. And Uber is able to track wherever they are.
Yes.
So what are we talking about? So oil theft maybe just once or twice in a week. It shouldn't be a problem for us to be able to. So interestingly, we have somebody who appears to be very, good record. That's Ribadu, So I think if we can track oil theft, and ensure that we stop it, Nigeria may even produce more than 2 million barrels of oil per day. If we don't stop that, I think there will be a whole sort of crisis. And it's also talking about the NNPC in terms of restructuring to make it to be more effective in terms of shareholding and all that. I think those are institutional changes, not just personnel changes, which I think are very fundamental. So I hope that the government will take some of the recommendations I had made.
All right. Adekunle, what's your final take on this?
Well, the president of Nigeria, I will hire him to assist me in some of the tasks. He has a sound knowledge. I've reported the sector very well too, but the way he speaks, I'm even moved by a lot of... You see, the problem of Nigeria is not lack of knowledge or
lack
of information or law or anything, but it's the political will to do something. With the current state of our economy, the president needs to do more in that sector, because if he gets it right in that sector, it will help him to do massive job in the governance of Nigeria. The government has ambitious plans, but funding, without money, there are no plans. Yeah. So that's why the government needs to, make sure that that sector, the problems there, can be tackled. I believe so.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. And once again, thank you to our guest, Kevin Emmanuel. Let's move on quickly to our final conversation for today. The situation concerning many issues in Nigeria can best be described as the more we see, the